guest today, Thomas Ray Garcia, who is running for SBOE Board of Education, District 2, if I said that correctly. And I interviewed him about a year ago, and I'm so excited to have him back and to find out what's been going on with your campaign. Welcome back, Thomas.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Fabiola. It's been a big adventure, to say the least.
I bet. Oh my goodness. Are you excited for the results last night?
Yes, I think it was a clear sign of generational change across the state. My district's 14 counties. I was tuned in to runoff races in all of them. And I was really excited to see good turnout as well as new people stepping up to the plate and earning these positions and nominations. So we have Connor Rice up in Nueces County as the new Democratic Party chair. I've known Connor for some time now. I know he's going to do a great job as the Democratic Party chairman up there.
Yeah.
And we have here in Hidalgo County, Julio Salinas, if elected, would be the youngest state rep in the state house. And that's what I'm talking about. We need people to step up to the plate for this generational change. New ideas is a good thing. And I look forward to being part of that in November.
We need change. I think that's what drove voter turnout, and that's what will continue to drive voter turnout. We need change. We need to do things differently. Talking about, the young generation, many Texans don't closely follow the State Board of Education. Why should people pay attention to it?
Well, the State Board of Education influences what our teachers teach and students learn in public school classrooms. It also has a huge influence over what our textbooks look like, not just in Texas, but across the country, because other states also buy into Texas's textbook market. The State Board of Education is a 15-member body, so each member does have outsized influence over the wording of our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the specifics in our graduation requirements. The State Board of Education also gets to veto or approve recommended charter schools from the Texas Education Commissioner. And so many other duties as they relate to public schools. As an educator myself, I understand that the legislature is important, but the SBOE is equally important because the SBOE dictates the quality of public schools and whether public schools really have a voice at the Texas Education Agency. And for so long, I feel Hidalgo County hasn't had that. In fact, our last Hidalgo County resident that sat on the SBOE was Ruben Hinojosa in the early 80s, our former congressman. So I think that change is needed because if you have someone on the ground who covers your area, who understands your public schools, I'll be able to put our needs first at the SBOE. I'll be a loud voice both at the TEA and at the Texas legislature to make sure we can have the needed resources in our public schools. And of course, we are learning what we need to learn in our classrooms. I'm a big proponent of moving away from the STAR test and toward real life learning. In my platform, I focus on early childhood and math literacy for kids, making sure that they're not getting into effective test taking, but real life learning and lifelong readers and lovers of math. Teaching our high school students 21st century skills that'll actually get them that high paying job and competitive job in the 21st century workforce. And that includes digital literacy, making sure we learn about mental health in middle school and high school, and so much more. And of course, making sure we fight for higher pay at the legislature, moving away from high stakes testing, making sure our teachers have the autonomy to teach.
That's a lot, Thomas. That's a lot. That's a lot. And this job there's no salary, correct?
Correct. It's considered a part-time position, just like a local school board. And this office also doesn't have a literal office nor a staff. So it's really that one member that has jurisdiction over about 2 million people. And that member needs to be the voice for public schools up in Austin.
That's amazing. You are a product of public school. You are a product of the Valley PSJA, and you came back. So you're here full circle. You had your degree. People can look at your platform. You're highly qualified, and I can tell that your interest in public education is genuine, which is why I'm excited to see somebody like you run. What kind of decisions does the SBOE make that directly affect the families? You told us what you are in charge of, but how are the families affected?
On the ground, we have a voice. Have influence over public schools on public-private partnerships and programs within the school. My background is in college access, which I consider parental engagement as well. You need to engage with the entire family in order to ensure that student goes off to college successfully. And I hope to be that on the ground at local schools to ensure our parents feel empowered, that they feel seen and heard in public school decisions, they understand their rights, and they understand who to go to for certain issues. I say this because, as the child of a single mother, my mother often didn't know how to navigate these bureaucracies. So,
Mhm.
witnessing that growing up, and as an educator myself, I understand the need to work closely with parents. As an elected board member, I hope to be that person on the ground to bridge that gap between school board members and parents and teachers. We need to collaborate. At the board itself, a lot of the decisions we make influence what students learn in the classroom. But as an educator, I understand education isn't just constrained to the TEKS in the classroom. It really starts at home. Something I talk about often on the campaign trail is the need to bring in parents into the classroom so they understand how to continue that education at home on the weekend and over the summer. A big part of that is screen time. So I'm a big proponent of lessening screen time, making sure parents understand the 21st century attention economy and what's happening when young people get onto social media or any never ending scroll, and how that's developmentally changing their brains. And that was an issue I didn't have to deal with as a teenager. I got my smartphone much later when my brain was more developed. But now teenagers are coming into the classroom with smart devices in hand, with a fundamentally different understanding of reality because of their experience online. And we need to work closely with parents to make sure students don't just have phones away at the school, but they also have restrictions at home and they can have a healthier mind as a result of it. So that's just one specific example of something I hope to focus on as an elected member. And
Mhm.
that's back to our point earlier, generational change. I understand this issue because I grew up with it. And I see it in my students in both the high school classes I teach through dual enrollment at South Texas College and the adult learners I teach at South Texas College. We need to make sure parents are at the table when we make these decisions about what our classrooms look like, because the education doesn't just stop when the bell rings, especially when it comes to smart devices.
And I'm sure a lot of families and parents would like to be more involved. And so I'm glad that you're seeing that you want to include parents. I think we should also include our businesses because ultimately they're going to be hiring them and training them. And also, and not just be college specific, but also the trades. We need a lot of people to go into the trades. I think you had mentioned you had interest in developing that as well, the
Yeah,
trade.
post-secondary pathways are key. In my experience with college access for all, which was the motto of my nonprofit, meant that we give access to students who want it. They have the resources, the information, the mentorship to then decide, is college right for me? And if it wasn't right for them, they made that decision with the information, resources, and mentorship. No one made that decision for them. So then the hard work was showing them alternative pathways, whether it was the trades, whether it was the military, whether it was getting a first job and then being able to scale up their career from there.
Mhm.
So those pathways are key to implement starting in middle school to make sure students are aware early on of the different career paths they can go on, and then giving them the flexibility to change their pathways if necessary. That's going to take a lot of realignment at the State Board of Education to make sure our middle school students in particular have many different pathways ahead of them and they're fully aware of what the future has for them. At South Texas College, regionally, we do a lot of that work already. So I've been learning a lot from my employer, how it's doing this with dual enrollment, with certificate programs. But not every region in Texas has a South Texas College. So it's
Mm.
going to take bringing that institutional memory and the successful partnerships I see working down here in the Valley to Austin to make sure we can scale these programs so students across the state can benefit from having many different pathways starting in middle school to a successful life after high school.
I think it's important also to staff the counselors, the counseling department, because I'm an educator myself too, and I had seniors my last 2 years of teaching, and they don't spend that much time with the counselors. Some of them knew from middle school they were able to use that resource, and they would go to their counselors, and they had that I guess culture, right? It's like, yeah, I can go to the counselor, and they were taught, but many students did not. And I also, talking to counselors, would hear that there was not enough time. They have so many students. How can you possibly give them good counseling when the next student is at your door?
That's a key issue I want to work on. I mean, attention matters and capacity matters. This is something I hope to work on with legislators, both Democratic and Republican at the legislature. We can make adjustments to the Texas Education Code. We can provide proper funding and guardrails to make sure these administrative tasks aren't being placed on the backs of teachers and counselors who are already overburdened. A
Mhm.
school system is only as successful as all of its members together working in tandem in their proper roles, not overdoing anything to make sure they're actually performing at a high level in what they're supposed to be working on with their students. So when counselors in particular are doing so much, from mental health concerns to parental outreach to the scheduling to so much more, we're setting them up for failure if we don't give them the proper resources, the pay, and the guardrails, which is fewer students per counselor, in order to do their job well. And I hope to work on that at the legislative session with the Democrats and Republicans. And on the campaign trail, I bring these common sense issues up. Often on the campaign trail and in the news, you might hear a lot of hot button issues that divide Democrats and Republicans. But that issue you just brought up is a common sense issue that Democrats and Republicans, at least in my experience, agree with. So I hope to put these issues on the forefront of the minds of the legislators as they go up to the session. And if we can make any progress on these issues, I consider that a win. So from my position on the board, I hope to be both an organizer and a capacity builder in bringing bringing these items to attention. If someone can do that on the ground up, I think we'll see a big difference when it comes time to passing these bills at the legislature.
I agree. I wanted to ask you about AI, but I don't think we're going to have time for that as far as using it in our curriculum. So I'm going to go to our next topic. One of the biggest current debates is right now is over social studies curriculum standards. What concerns you most about the direction of these discussions? And I don't know if you can give us a little bit of background.
Yes, in September 2025, the State Board of Education voted 8-7 to pass a rewrite, a new framework of teaching social studies in our state. This rewrite is controversial because it's the first of its kind to teach social studies chronologically from the early grades to the later grades. Now, one of the key issues that brings up is developmental appropriateness. And I actually spoke about this issue at the State Board of Education meeting in April. I testified that it seems like a lot of people who are on these work groups determining the language of the TEKS are actually not early childhood experts, because they're asking elementary age students to learn about abstract concepts like free enterprise, high school level topics. Some of these people believe that if you simply teach a high school level topic to an elementary school student, that's somehow rigor and high standards. But any educator can tell you that's just illogical, and it means they're not following the science. So we need people who understand the science of learning, who understand pedagogy, who understand cognitive science, and can teach appropriate topics, the appropriate grade levels. That's one key issue here. When you have early grade levels learning about ancient civilizations, and then the later grade levels overwhelmingly learning about Texas history, one controversial element in this new rewrite is that there's less focus on global histories and cultures and even more focus on Texas history. Now, that could be decent if the Texas history was actually fair and balanced. But what we're seeing in these proposed TEKs is there's even less focus on the histories of places like the Rio Grande Valley, less focus on civil rights history, in some cases, oversimplifications of the struggles of minorities in our state. And I can go on and on about all the different issues I have with this rewrite. But first and foremost, I got to say, it's just politicized. The State Board of Education understands November is going to be a reckoning. They understand that this District 2, which was flipped by the Republicans by 0.4 points in 2022, is very likely to flip this coming November. So they're trying to ram through and rush through this social studies rewrite before November, before I'm elected, because they understand that it's controversial, it's not popular. but it's the last gasp of partisans and extremists who want to rewrite the way we learn history and who want to reshape what millions of students are going to be learning about our cultures, our history, and who we are as a people.
Right. Not to mention religion. Religion. There's a lot of mention of religion in there, correct? I mean, that was already done. I saw the Bluebonnet curriculum. That's something else in the elementary level.
Correct. Bluebonnet learning for elementary and middle school, elementary and math is already controversial. So the reading passages in particular, there is an infusion of Christian religious texts from the Bible. The literary works list being proposed at the State Board of Education also contain Bible verses. Now, what's controversial about that is that it seems to be a focus on the Christian religion, but not so much other religions. So it's one thing to learn about religion if you're comparing the religions and understanding their contributions to world history, but it's a whole other thing if you're preaching instead of teaching. And I'm afraid that's what the Bluebonnet learning has essentially become. I'm concerned about the inclusion of Bible verses in the literary works lists, where you see Christian Bible verses, but no other sacred texts. And in the social studies curriculum, you do see a more inherent focus on the Christian religion and its impact on America, rather than looking at a holistic view of the religions across the world. So when it comes to rolling back the focus on global histories and cultures, that's what gets lost. We lose focus on other world religions, and there's more of a focus on the Christian religion. That could be okay if we were teaching it rather than preaching it. But this threads the line between the separation of church and state, which is something that I advocate for. I believe in the First Amendment. That's freedom of religion, freedom from religion. This goes back to the idea of Christian nationalism creeping into our politics.
Right.
We need to fight back against that. Christian nationalism is not Christianity. It's a political movement. We need to fight against it with everything we have, and it starts in our K through 12 schools.
Absolutely. What can Texans do ahead of the June 22nd through 26th SBOE meeting if they want their voices heard, Thomas?
Well, step one is to submit a public comment on some of the agenda items. One agenda item will be the social studies curriculum, and the second agenda item will be about the literary works list, which is a mandatory reading list the State Board of Education is going to review and approve. Starting a few years from now, English teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade will have to assign these mandatory literary works. So anybody can submit a public comment before June 15th, and we can provide a link to that page somewhere in this podcast.
We can.
And that public comment is key because State Board of Education is a bit different from the legislature and Congress. They do want to hear from you, and your voice does matter. Making sure you have an informed opinion about why a literary work is assigned over another one, or why is the literary works list so long anyway, and why are we learning this in social studies versus that. So every opinion matters. And secondly, as we get closer to the June 22nd first meeting of the SBOE, there'll be a public testimony form opening on the Texas Education Agency website. And as soon as that's live, please look out for that. I'll be pushing it to make sure if you can make it up to Austin and testify in person, this is the meeting to do it. Again, the State Board of Education is trying to ram through the social studies curriculum and the literary works list because they understand they might not have the votes to do this in 2027. So June is going to be one of the final opportunities for us to make our voices heard on both of these crucial items. If you can't make it up there in person, do submit a written testimony. And every word counts, every testimony counts, every story counts. I'll also note that our board member, LJ Francis, is not running for re-election because he lost his primary. So he only has a few months left in his term, and his vote could be crucial. So please reach out to him as a District 2 member. Encourage him to do the right thing, to look at the facts, not the politics. If enough of us make our voices heard, I think we can sway voices on the State Board of Education.
The incumbent is an immigrant himself, is he not? Or he has his background?
Correct. He's an immigrant from Jamaica.
All these comments, people here in the Valley, before I did my grassroots organizing, before I did any of this, and as a teacher, as an educator, we were always, I guess we're not taught to speak up. And then when we know we should speak up, we feel embarrassed or shy. these comments, are they public? Are they placed somewhere? Should people feel safe when they make comments? Because I know people are just embarrassed. They feel threatened, or they feel that it's going to affect their work.
These public comments you submit to the Texas Education Agency are between you and the Texas Education Agency. You should feel safe making them. We do have a First Amendment right, especially as educators. Your expertise is needed. Whether you're a social studies teacher or not, whether you're an English teacher or not, you have pedagogical experience with students. Whether you're a current or former teacher, your voice is especially needed, because I can tell you the people who are making their voices heard really don't know what they're talking about, to be honest with you. There's a lot of partisanship. There's a lot of make believe what's going on in the classroom. And if those are the loudest voices, then our State Board of Education members are going to be looking at a skewed version of reality. We do need more educators speaking up. Your voice is crucial. And if you can't make it up to Austin to testify in person, submitting a written testimony in lieu of that is also crucial. Sending emails to your State Board of Education members are also crucial. The emails do make a difference. They do get read.
Teachers, if you're listening, listen to Thomas Ray Garcia. Teachers across the state, right? Not just the District 2. Well, we've run out of time. Thomas, thank you so much for coming back. And I wanted to ask, if viewers who support your campaign are watching this, they run into this, how can they support you? How can they help?
This race is a race you might not often hear about. You'll hear about Senate, Congress, and governor. State Board of Education is a crucial race, though. The way to help, most of all, is to spread the word to your family and friends. State Board of Education District 2 in particular is the swing district. If we can win this seat back, we can make a real difference at the State Board of Education. The social studies rewrite was approved by only a single vote. Bluebonnet Learning was approved by only a single vote. We can stop the damage after this November. Secondly, if you live outside the district but want to support, donating truly is the best way to support. I don't want to give too much away to my opposition, but we are breaking records when it comes to fundraising in terms of amounts and number of donors. And it's grassroots. This is a grassroots campaign. Whether you can donate $5, $10, whether it's one time or reoccurring, that truly makes a difference, because it shows people we have real support for this campaign, that people are standing up for their public schools. So I encourage you to make a donation at my Act Blue, which you can find on my social media at Thomas Ray Garcia on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or you can simply Google my name, Thomas Ray Garcia, and you'll find my website and my Act Blue.
Thomas Ray Garcia for SBOE District 2. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you, Fabiola. Likewise.
Bye, everybody.